A veteran buys a worthless farm against all advice. What secret brings historians to his door? Find out on Graceful Valor Stories. Have you lost your mind? That's what they told him. That farm, it was nothing, just tall grass, tangled brush, and rotting fence posts. No future, no value, just silence on the edge of nowhere in Texas. Everyone tried to stop the old soldier when he spent his entire life savings on a piece of land no one wanted. But months later, a convoy of black SUVs rolled slowly up the dirt road. Historians stepped out and began setting up tents in the yard. The town went quiet because that so-called worthless land was hiding something the entire nation had nearly forgotten, a secret buried for decades. Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. They called it a dead place, 60 acres of forgotten dirt just outside Cedar Grove, Texas. The grass was brittle, the fences rusted, the barn leaned like it was tired of standing, and the house, it looked like it had given up years ago. Nobody came out this far except maybe a few coyotes and teenagers looking for a scare. So when a 74-year-old man named Ray Delaney walked into the county clerk's office and dropped a cashier's check on the counter, the room fell quiet. It was everything he had, his entire retirement. The clerk blinked. "You sure, Mr. Delaney?" Ray nodded. "Calm, steady, I've never been more sure." He didn't explain himself, not to her, not to the real estate agent, not even to his son, Jacob, who drove in from Dallas a few days later. They stood by the broken fence. Jacob's arms were crossed, his jaw clenched. "Dad," he said, "this place is nothing but dust and memory. Why now?" Ray adjusted his ball cap, the one with the faded Marine Corps emblem. His voice was quiet. "Because I made a promise." Jacob didn't argue. He just sighed and drove back to the city, and Ray stayed. He moved into the rotting farmhouse with a bedroll, a duffel bag, and a toolbox. No contractors, no fancy plans, just his own two hands. Every morning at dawn, he was out there cutting back the brush, mending what could be saved, clearing the land like it still meant something. People noticed, but they didn't understand. The lady at the post office started bringing him iced tea. A rancher dropped off a few old boards, but most folks just whispered, "Poor old guy's lost it. Thinks he's some kind of cowboy." But Ray didn't care, because what they didn't see was the map folded tight, tucked between a few medals and old letters drawn in pencil back in 1969 on the back of a ration box. The ink had faded, but Ray had it memorized, a red circle right where the barn stood next to a winding stream that curled like a question mark, and next to it written in bold block letters, "Shelter Point Priority 3 Confidential." By the third week Ray's hands were raw. The thorn bushes had taken over the fence line, the floorboards were rotten, and a rusty nail had already sent him to the ER for a tetanus shot. But Ray kept going. Every swing of the hammer, every inch of cleared land. He wasn't fixing a house, he was keeping a promise. You see, 56 years ago, Ray stood on this same dirt in uniform. Back then, it wasn't just a rundown property, it was a training site, a test location for emergency shelter drills. During the height of the Cold War, it was 19 men. The Marine Corps had selected this land for something secret, something quiet. Ray's unit was sent to assess it, and leading that unit was Sergeant William "Billy" Conrad. Conrad wasn't just a sergeant, he was Ray's best friend. They'd bled together, laughed under jungle stars, survived things most people only read about, and on their last night at the site, Conrad stood under a Texas moon, looked Ray in the eye, and said, "If I don't come back, you protect this place. It matters more than you know." Ray gave a half smile. "You planning not to come back?" But Conrad didn't laugh, and 2 months later, Ray got the telegram. Billy had stepped on a landmine outside Dinaan. They couldn't even recover him whole. Ray never talked about it, not to his wife, not to Jacob, but he never forgot. He kept the map, and now, every brush cleared, every wall lifted, wasn't about nostalgia, it was a mission. What did Ray uncover beneath the old oak tree? Stay tuned on Graceful Valor Stories. One morning, as the sun crept over the trees, Ray was digging near the old oak. It was marked on the map, a faint X beside the word secondary cache. Then thunk, the shovel hit something. Ray dropped to his knees. Slowly he brushed away the soil. There it was, a stone marker covered in moss, the edges worn by time, but just barely he could read, USMC April 1968 Shelter Evaluation Site. Ray sat back, heart pounding. It wasn't just memory anymore, it was real. The next morning, Ray returned to the oak tree. Long before the sun had fully risen, he hadn't slept much. The marker, Conrad's message, carved in stone, it echoed louder than any dream. This time, Ray brought tools and purpose. He widened the hole, dug carefully, slowly, layer by layer, until the shovel struck something solid, metal. He dropped to his knees. There, buried deep beneath the roots, was a military ammo box. Rust clung to its corners, but it was sealed, intact. Ray's breath caught. He pried it open. Inside, a unit patch, faded, but unmistakable. 1st Recon Battalion, a black and white photo, 6 young Marines standing tall in front of the same barn he was restoring. Ray knew every face. He whispered their names one by one, then folded beneath the photo a bundle of hand-drawn maps, troop movement documents, notes scribbled in pencil, and at the very bottom, a wax-sealed envelope. Ray stared at the handwriting across the top, authored by Sergeant William Conrad, April 1968 to U.S. Marine Corps Historical Division, confidential, eyes. Only, his hand shook as he opened it. The letter was long, but the message was clear right from the start. Conrad had written it before he deployed. It was more than a report, it was a warning, a record, a secret meant to be found one day. He explained that Creek Hollow Farm was one of several hidden locations, part of a classified Cold War evacuation plan. If a nuclear attack ever hit the East Coast, these farms would shelter children evacuated from Washington, D.C. No fanfare, no recognition, just quiet rural land prepared for the unthinkable. It was never made public, never listed, not even acknowledged by the Pentagon, but Conrad had felt something, a pull. He left this marker, this box, because he knew history forgets, and he trusted Ray to remember. Ray sat with the letter in his lap, eyes wet, hands steady. He stood, looked out across the field, and whispered, "They're going to need to know." Then he walked inside and made a call, not to the press, not to the government. He dialed an old number, didn't know if it still worked. After 3 rings, Colonel Rohr speaking. Ray smiled. "Tom, it's Delaney. I found it." 2 days later, a black SUV rolled up the gravel road to the farm. Dust followed it like a memory unwilling to settle. Ray stood on the porch, flannel shirt, coffee in hand, cap pulled low. He didn't move, he didn't wave, he just waited. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a tall, silver-haired man, still carried himself like a soldier, even in retirement, Colonel Thomas "Tom" Rohr. They hadn't seen each other in nearly 30 years, but some bonds don't rust. "You always did keep your word," Rohr said before wrapping Ray in a firm, silent hug. They didn't waste time with small talk. Ray led him to the tree, to the box, to the letter. Rohr didn't say much as he looked it over. His face hardened. Then he pulled out his phone. "Give me 24 hours. He made the call. By the end of the week, 3 more SUVs arrived. This time, the lead passenger was a historian, Dr. Samuel "Sam" Whitaker from the U.S. Military History Institute. He wasn't what Ray expected, small glasses, boots too clean for this kind of dirt, but the man's eyes, those held reverence. Ray handed him the letter. Whitaker sat on the porch, read it twice, hands trembling by the second. "Read this is real," he whispered. Ray just nodded. "You thought I made it up?" "No," Whitaker said softly, "we just never had proof. The Cold War shelter program was always considered myth, no files, no budget trails, just rumors." He looked at Ray. "But this is a door." Whitaker asked for full access to the land. Ray agreed, on one condition: you treat it with respect. This place isn't just history, it's a promise. Soon they came by the dozens, historians, archivists, graduate students, even local volunteers. They brought scanners, ground-penetrating radar, cameras, notebooks, and what they found shook them. Under the barn floor, 6 sealed footlockers still intact. Inside, dehydrated food, medical kits, children's clothes in vacuum-packed bags, and a chalkboard still faintly marked with evacuation routes. Cedar Grove, Texas, was labeled Point Bravo. They kept digging, found more stone markers, cache points, medical stations, each one right where Conrad had written. The story spread, first the Cedar Grove Tribune, then San Antonio, then Washington. Ray Delaney, the quiet man who spent his savings on a useless farm, was suddenly a national headline. People brought casseroles to his porch, kids waved at him from school buses, the mayor gave him a civic medal, a local teacher asked him to speak at the high school. Ray didn't care for the noise, but one thing mattered more than all the cameras, all the praise. Conrad's name was finally in the records. Weeks later, the Department of Defense confirmed the discovery. Creek Hollow Farm was officially listed on the Register of Undocumented Historic Military Locations. There was a ceremony. Ray didn't give a speech, didn't pose for the news, he just stood quietly by the old oak tree, hand resting on the marker, cap pulled low. That was enough. The news called it the farm that history forgot, but for Ray Delaney, it was never about headlines, it was about a promise made beneath a Texas moon with no cameras, no applause, just 2 Marines and the silence between them. How did Ray's promise change history forever? Discover more on Graceful Valor Stories. Now that promise had been kept. After the official recognition, the offers came fast. Developers, investors, corporate suits with smooth voices and deeper pockets. "We'll build a Cold War museum," one said. "We'll name the place after you," said another. One man waved a check with 6 zeros. Ray looked out across the land, the field where Conrad once stood, the barn that still held their photo, the oak tree that whispered through the years. Then he looked back. "You want to honor me," he said. "Leave it alone." Instead of selling, Ray partnered with a conservation trust out of Austin. They walked the fields with him, mapped every marker, documented every hidden cache, listened carefully to every story. Then they drew up the paperwork, a perpetual conservation easement, meaning no one, not a buyer, not the government, not even family, could ever build over this land. It would stay exactly as it was, quiet, sacred, protected. Ray added just one request: keep it open, let school kids walk the paths, let veterans sit under the trees, free always. Within a year, buses began pulling up once a month. Students from Austin, from Dallas, even Oklahoma, they came to hear the old Marine tell stories, not from textbooks, But from the ground beneath their feet, Ray didn't lecture, he didn't dramatize, he simply walked with them, stopped at the oak tree, rested a hand on the stone marker, and told them about Sergeant Billy Conrad, a man who prepared for the worst so children could live through it. Courage, Ray would say, isn't just charging into battle, sometimes it's what you leave behind in case others can't. Over time, he added benches, simple wood seats beneath the trees, a small outdoor classroom, one of the chalkboards they found in the barn. He cleaned it up and hung it under the awning. You could still see the faint outline of the old maps, but now it held something else, the names of the 6 Marines in the photo, preserved in chalk, so no one would forget. Ray lived 7 more years on the farm. His hands stiffened, his legs slowed, but his eyes, they never stopped watching the land. He spent his mornings on the porch, coffee in hand, dog at his feet. When he passed, he left no fortune, no mansion, no headlines, just the land and a story. At his memorial held under the oak, a group of school kids held handmade signs. Thank you, Mr. Ray, we remember. Veterans drove in from 4 states. Colonel Rohr, older now, but still standing tall, delivered the eulogy. He didn't just remember history, he carried it, and he left it somewhere it could never be buried again. A new plaque was placed next to the old marker, simple, solid, eternal. Raymond Delaney, USMC 1945-2029, keeper of the promise. Some heroes carry rifles, others carry memory. He carried both. Not all legacies are made of marble, some are made of dirt, of silence, of promises kept long after the world forgets they were made. Ray Delaney didn't save a battlefield, he saved what others forgot, a promise, a farm, a legacy. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition, some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry, and sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost. What will Ray Delaney's legacy inspire in the next generation? Discover more on Graceful Valor Stories.